Thank you so much, Tiffany, for having me. Just so our listeners know, I normally don't share much of my life online. So you're one of the few people that we met online too, but you're one of the few people I've shared my birth story with. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. But it's yeah, I'm pretty private online, so this is a new thing for me. But so basically, I have two sons. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old. And I'm going to talk about my most previous birth, but for background information, with my 2.5-year-old, I went with a medical midwife. I went to the birthing center to have him. And it was before I learned about, free birthing and all that. I just knew I didn't want to go to a hospital. So I had him at a birth center and ended up doing the castor oil, per the midwife's request. And, there was that intervention. Now I've educated myself. I wouldn't do that now. But anyways, everything is all good with that. Like, he's healthy, he's doing great. And then with my most recent birth, I decided to go the free birth route just because I didn't want anybody interfering with my birth, and I didn't really want to pay someone like thousands of dollars as well after the experience I had with my previous birth. So, yeah, both my pregnancies were very smooth. They were healthy, nothing weird happened. But when I gave birth to my son, my most recent birth, I just knew like I was almost time. Like, I didn't have any complications, but the day I gave birth, I was like, I think it's going to happen today. I just had that feeling. And it felt really good to be in tune with that because with my first one, I just kind of did whatever the midwife told me to do. That's probably. So basically, the day that my son was born, it was around 3 p.m., started getting the contractions. And, it went on till about, I think he was born around like 1 in the morning. And we actually totally missed the time. Me and my husband just like forgot to look at the clock, but we knew it was around that time. But, the lead up to it was the contractions and basically just getting through that, breathing through that. I didn't have anything fancy set up. Like with my first, she had a birthing pool, and I remember I hated it when I went in. I didn't enjoy that experience at all. So I didn't even bother. Excuse me. I didn't even bother doing that this time. So I didn't really have anything fancy set up other than like I had a couple oils out, and basically I was just like in my head, and just taking deep breaths through the contractions, through the pain, and just focusing, and that's pretty much it. Like I didn't do anything drastic. And it was just myself and my husband. My other son was asleep at the time when it happened. So anyway, when I gave birth, we were in the bathroom, and I was like standing over the toilet, and I was like, it's happening. Like, if he's going to come out now, and so he came out. It was a very smooth process, and it was just really exciting, to do that. My husband caught him, and he was healthy, he was like, cried. He was, he was doing great. I remember my cord was kind of short. And so my husband was like obviously noticing everything, and there was lots of blood, that was coming out. And with my first as well, like I remember my midwife freaking out. She was like, she's hemorrhaging, she's bleeding out. And I was kind of like still in the bliss of giving birth that I was like, what is she talking about? So I noticed my husband was kind of like, already aware that was a thing last time. So he was keeping an eye on it. And, but I chose, like, when I was prepping for this birth, I was like, you know what, like, I didn't watch a lot of birth stories. I didn't like psych myself out because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I just have to get my head in the game, like I didn't want to dwell on what happened before because you just never know what's going to happen. So I kind of started to notice he was like getting a little worried, because there was a lot of blood coming out. And I was very aware and awake, like, oh my goodness, I just gave birth. You know how it is. You're in this like just amazing feeling. I can't even describe it. You're just like this whole other, I don't know how to describe it, but you're so aware, but you're also in bliss with this like thing that just happened. So, but I did notice his energy was like off because he was like, whoa, like there's a lot. And so we kind of moved out of the bathroom to our living room area where we had like a blanket set up, and I still had the baby attached to the cord. So I just like laid down on the living room floor, and like I was still, I was still bleeding. And at this point, he was like, and we had prepped in the sense of like I had herbal supplements like in for bleeding, like I had shepherd's purse and yarrow, and so he was starting to give me that in like pretty big quantities, like big, because he was starting to get worried, and it would work, but then the blood kept coming, and my placenta wasn't coming out yet, so it all was happening really fast, and I wasn't keeping an eye on the clock. Like I was just focused on the baby at this point, and I kind of just let him deal with the blood thing, even though it was my body. Like, I was like, oh, like he's looking, like I was just in my own world. And so eventually he's like, I think we should call an ambulance. Like I think this is like way too much blood. And obviously like that's not the route I wanted to go. Like we didn't even go to the hospital with my first, the hospital was just like not part of my plan. And I remember because I was like so aware, like my mind was aware of like like the energies around me, you know what I mean? Like going on. So I was like in that moment, I was like, okay, like I can either choose to get upset about this or I can just like roll with this. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to ruin the moment because I was upset that I was like gonna go to the hospital. And I had to trust him. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just want to ask a question. How were you feeling physically, like with the amount of blood? Like, were you feeling any kind of lightheadedness or, and I also wanted to ask as well, was it more blood than it was in your first birth?
So I actually was feeling, I thought I was fine, to be honest. I was like, oh, like I'm all right. But I also did see like I felt like I was fine, but then like when I saw all the blood coming out, I'm like, oh, that is like a lot of blood. Like it was like, everywhere and like all over the toilet and the floor. And then we got like a bowl and it was like filling up the bowl. And I was like, okay, like it is kind of a lot. My placenta still wasn't coming out. And, and I really, and compared to my first birth, I was kind of in it was the same situation looking back where it was like, I didn't think it was that much blood, but everyone else was like, oh my gosh, like freaking out. And so and my husband wasn't like freaking out. I don't want to make, the midwife was the first time,
Did the
but,
midwife give you Pitocin?
what's that? Sorry.
Did the midwife give you Pitocin? How did she deal with the hemorrhage situation at home?
So that's the thing with the midwife. Because we're in California, she can't give Pitocin. So I remember her telling me, "Oh, if I could administer Pitocin, I would have given it to you already." But she didn't give me anything. I didn't know this at the time, but my husband said that she had put something up my butt, like to stop the bleeding. But I don't remember that, and I don't remember what it was. I don't know. And he actually told me that.
Yeah, I wonder if she gave you Cytotec. But you said she can't administer medicine because she's in California?
Yeah, so she said that she wasn't allowed to minister Pitocin during my labor. Like,
Dang.
yeah, I don't know. I never
Wonder
even.
it must be different than it from New York because I know in New York, like a licensed midwife can do that, but of course it's different state to state.
Yeah, so that's what she had said. So I don't remember any of that, but he said that's what helped to stop it. And she actually did get to the point because a lot of midwives pride themselves like they don't call an ambulance for transfers. Like she actually did call an ambulance, but when they got there, she decided to turn them away because it was like slowing down. So thankfully, I never had to go, with that. But with the second time, I that's when I decided I'm like, you know what, like I just have to like go with this because like I don't want to like fight or be upset right now. You know what I mean? And I also trust my husband, and I'm like, well, if he's like me, like we didn't want to have to do that, but if he felt like that was necessary, like I trusted that. And a lot of people, it was your body, like you should be the one making that call, blah blah. But I'm like, well, they also needed his help, like I trust that too. That's kind of what I decided quickly in that moment. I'm like, all right, we just got to do it, roll with it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we live out like kind of in the country. So there's a very small hospital that's near us, and they got here, and I've never been in an ambulance, so that was new. But the whole time, the baby's on me. He was actually still attached. The placenta hadn't come out yet. I'm still having contractions. Um, and it wasn't like chaotic or anything. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, we must blah, blah, blah. Like, it didn't feel that way. Honestly, like, I felt like at peace the whole time. I was just like, as long as my baby's on me, like, I don't care about stuff, you know?
Yeah, just don't separate me from my baby.
Exactly. No one did. And because that's when I was like, I don't care, like I'll fight somebody, like I'm like, but so anyway, we get there, and because it's such a small hospital, like they don't even take like they don't they don't have an OB, like they don't take like those kinds of cases. They always like ship people off to the next city because it's such a small town. So when I got there, there was just like a lot of people in the room. Like there was like the doctors and the nurses. I don't know, probably like 7 people. And I think because they were more like intrigued, like, oh, we never get to see this. You know what I mean? So I think it was more from that perspective than like, it wasn't, I think they were just like they were intrigued. Like this woman just gave birth at home and now she's here. Like this is so cool. And so basically they were like, there was like two main people, like the main like doctor on duty, it was a woman. And then it was like a nurse practitioner. And the nurse practitioner was like, look, like I've given birth 3 times at home. I get what you're trying to do. And she wasn't being condescending. So if I make it sound that way, I'm sorry. But she was just informing me, like, I get what you're trying to do. She's like, but we really need to get that placenta out. And she was trying to encourage Pitocin. And then the other doctor was like, hey, like the main doctor was like, I can see the placenta, like it's almost out. Like, she wasn't pressing it at all. Like she was like, let her do her thing. So they're kind of like going back and forth, and then they kind of look at me, and I said, what I need to do right now is I need to stand up and I get off my back and birth my placenta. Like I'm ready, and that's what I need to do right now. And everyone like listened to me and like let me do that. Like no one was like, no, you must do this. Like they backed off. They were still intrigued. Like there was people, like other nurses that were like kind of in the this like, oh shoot, like this is happening. And so I get up and I'm just like, I just push it out. And I was like, I'm ready. I was over the contractions. I'm like, I want this to stop. So it comes out and it's just like, bam, like splatters. I remember it just like splatters down. And I felt so much better after. I think that was so cool for me too, because with my first birth, the midwife, when she was freaking out, I didn't really get a chance to like do the whole placenta thing. Like she kind of like, she pulled it out, and I remember it was really, really painful when that happened. It was really cool to like birth it myself. And so basically after that, and the whole time, literally my baby's on me. The only time he wasn't on me was when I had to get up to birth the placenta, and I was like, my husband needs to be here to hold the baby. Like I'm not giving him to anybody else or letting him, and they let me like call my husband and make sure he like came in, because he was like still like getting our toddler, and he was on his way, but they respected that, and they were like, they made sure he was there and only he was allowed to hold my baby. And then after that, the baby's back on me, and he's obviously like, thankfully, like just breastfed right away. So he's just feeding and being next to me this whole time, which was all I really cared about, by then. But, so anyways, after that happened, the main concern was just like, they obviously like drew my blood and were like, your like minerals are like so depleted. Like you could literally like it was dangerously low, to the point where like, I forget if she said cardiac arrest or something. I don't know, something like really bad could happen, because like everything was just drained, depleted. And I think because of all the blood I had been losing.
Yeah, you don't have to keep
But
it private. Don't worry.
okay. But so after that, I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm officially like done now. Like I can just like kick out or whatever I have to do. And the staff was very friendly with me. Like they took really good care of me, and they were like basically they gave me minerals like potassium and stuff like that. I didn't take anything crazy. It was just like minerals. And they ran their tests, and the main doctor was encouraging me. She's like, I really highly encourage you to go to the next city over, because they have an OB and you can get a thorough check. Like, I don't want to send you home and something bad happens. Like she was just like covering her bases, and I get that. But I was like, no, like I'd rather just stay here and be monitored for a while before I I didn't really want to do that. I just wanted to go home, obviously. So we stayed there for a while, and it did take quite a while for me to recover. I think we got there at like 2 in the morning, and then we left. I don't know what time was it, like noon or something. Like I was there for a while. But, it took a while because they did try, like there was 2 different times. They're like, okay, like try to stand up and see how you're feeling. And I was still like super dizzy. And so they're like, all right, like not yet, but you're getting close. But they were like encouraging the fact like, okay, like, this girl doesn't want to go to the hospital, the big one. So like, let's just monitor her. And what was I going to say? Oh, they did make me sign like the MDA where, because I didn't want to get transferred.
Against medical advice?
Yes. Yeah, AMA, thank you. Yes. So I did sign that because, they told me that that's what they recommended, but I didn't want to go. And then, but they didn't touch my baby, they actually didn't even pressure anything with the baby. They were just like, great. They respected the fact he was on me. The main concern with them was my condition. So, and then like, there was like, the typical pressure of like, well, we think this and we think that. But it's like, that's just their job. Their job is they think they have to save people, and it's always chaotic because it's an ER. So, but I'm just really grateful that I gave birth at home. Like, I would not want to have the birth portion, in the hospital. That's just me personally. Like, and maybe it works really well for people. Like, I don't know. I've never been through that. However, I'm just grateful that the actual birth itself was the way I wanted it,
Yeah.
And, whatever happened after, like, yeah, like for a minute, like after when I was processing it, I was like, this isn't, this wasn't a true free birth because I had to go to the hospital, and I was kind of like getting hung up on that. And then I was like, you know what? That's dumb. Like, I freaking gave birth, I gave birth to a baby, and like, like it was such an incredible experience. And
I also would say that you absolutely did have an unassisted birth. Absolutely did. I don't really use the term free birth as much anymore because I think there's so much like attached to that term, and I won't go on a tangent about that, but you gave birth to your baby without any medical assistance. You transferred post-birth to get the care that you felt you needed, and it sounds like you benefited from that.
Yeah. No, I do. Like, I don't know what would have happened had I not gone. Maybe I would have been okay. Maybe I wouldn't. And this is the same mystery with my first birth. Like, had people not interfered with the process, would I have been okay or not? I have no idea. But if you get hung up on stuff like that, it's like, there's nothing you can do about it at this point. Like, I have to move on. You know what I mean? Like, I can't dwell on like something that already happened. And if I give birth again, like, I'm not going to be like psyching myself out like, oh, well, if it happens again, like, like I said, like every situation's different, and, I can't predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is at the hospital, they were like, want to keep your placenta, like, and they were like, and I was like, yeah. And I remember with my midwife the first time, she was like, because my placenta for some reason with my first birth was like really, she actually made me feel kind of bad, like, when I gave birth to it, because she's like, oh my goodness, I've never seen a placenta like this. And she was like trash talking it because it looked kind of weird. Like, it wasn't like super healthy looking, like it looked odd, but I didn't know. I'd never given birth. But I remember I was like, why is she like making it, like, it kind of like hurt my feelings a little bit, because I was like, I've never done this, and she's over here making it sound like it's so ugly. And back then I was just like, oh, I guess, because she's like, well, do you want it, or should I keep it? And I didn't know at the time, so I actually let her discard it. Who knows what happened to it? And I regret that, but I don't regret it, like dwell on it, regret, but you know what I mean. And then with this time, it was like, they were like, yeah, like, you made this, you should keep it, like, blah, blah, blah. And of course I kept it this time, but it was just cool. And there was like one nurse too. He was like, it was a male nurse, and he actually was really educated about like a lot of stuff that, like, I guess people consider conspiracy theories and stuff. Like, we talked about a lot of stuff like that, like, the birth certificates, validity, like stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, he knows what's up, and so anyway, I don't know, it definitely, and I know it's because I'm also in a small country town where people are friendly, like that probably obviously helped. But thankfully I didn't have this like crazy negative experience.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you. And the whole piece of like wondering, what would have happened if you didn't call and, all like, oh, would you have been fine either way? It's like, of course it's natural to wonder like the what ifs, but it really seems like you surrendered to the process. And I wanted to say it before, but I didn't want to interrupt you, is like you and your husband are a team, like you guys become one, under marriage. Like that is biblically what marriage is. And I know there's so much to say about, choosing to birth in a specific way and having the partner on the same page as you and like, having them align completely with your, beliefs like for the birth. And that's such a topic that's discussed in like the free birth, sovereign birth, unassisted birth space. And, I do feel like when you are married, like if we're going to look at it from like the Christian perspective and like the biblical perspective, I don't think it's cool to just X the husbands out when they're not like 100% on the same page as you. I think that as a team, we work together on things. And obviously, your husband cares so much about your health and your well-being. And you guys made this baby together. And if, God forbid, anything happened to you, that would be on him. Like I was responsible for keeping her safe. We say like the husbands are the like guardians of the birth space, protectors of the birth space. But then we don't listen when there's, guidance to go, outsource for help. It doesn't make sense. It's like you can't have both. You can't say the husbands are the protectors of the space, but then when the husbands are like, hey, I'm concerned about this, can we get you help? It's like, what? How dare you suggest something like that? It just, I don't know. To me, it doesn't make sense.
I love that you pointed that out because I completely agree with you on that. Like, I think I completely agree from a biblical perspective that men have that role for a purpose. But I've noticed, because like, I like that you said unassisted birth because the free birth thing does feel like weird to me now too, because it's, how it is when there's like titles on it and stuff. And because the community, like, I've noticed the attitude of women is that like, well, you call all the shots. You, as the woman, like, you get to say whatever you want and do whatever you want. And yeah, I mean, you are the one giving birth and you need that space to like give birth. But in situations like mine, I can genuinely say like, I wouldn't have known what to do in that situation. Like, I probably would have just like not called an ambulance and then maybe I may or may not have been okay. I don't know. But I trusted him as the person there, as my husband to make those kinds of decisions. And so that's why I told you, like, I was very aware of that. Like, am I legit gonna get upset right now? We just gave, he helped me give birth to this beautiful baby. And am I gonna let this moment get ruined because of my attitude? So I'm really glad that he did that. And I trust him more than anybody. So, like, I just feel like the point I'm trying to get across is like, yes, when like we're intuitive and we're the ones physically doing that work. However, sometimes like it's okay to need that help from somebody else. Like you don't have to have all the answers in that moment. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure with that too. It's okay to like receive the help. So anyway, I love what you said.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. It's not my time to tell my story, but I know that you know my birth story, and I had a similar kind of post-birth, and, I didn't transfer, but I also know that I had a hard recovery, like a really hard recovery. And so, yeah, like in my mind, I have the opposite curiosities of if I did get some help, maybe it wouldn't have been so difficult for my body to heal. Maybe I was malnourished or didn't have or had depleted minerals and, things like that. And I sometimes wonder if I had gotten checked by a midwife or an OB, I could have benefited from a couple of stitches. And I know that that's a really, you know, big discussion in the free birth space as well. Being super against sutures. And I, was really brainwashed in that sense. And, looking back, I sometimes wonder, like, would it have made sense for me to get some? So, I just think it's normal to just have those curiosities of what would your experience look like if you did things differently, but you did them the way that you did them for a reason. And, I believe God guides us in that way. And yeah, and you clearly made the best decision for you.
Yeah. No, and I hear you because like the stitches thing, like with my first birth, she did give me stitches, and I didn't know about all the stuff around that at the time. But you're right, like if you want to get stitches, like who cares? Like that's up to you, you know. Like it's okay if you get that or not. Like either way, I just feel like some of this stuff that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to like get help. Like I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like this like weird. It's like so black and white in these communities, and sometimes like there's a giant gray area, and that's like okay.
Yeah, I think birth is one big giant gray area, and all of the dogma around birth and free birth. And if you do XYZ, then you don't get to title your birth as this. And it's just, I can't express enough that, like, if you're not making a certain decision for yourself because you want to be able to say that you had a free birth or you had this type of birth, like, you need a reframe, because it's like so beyond that. This is your body, this is your life, this is your baby's life. Like, the titles are irrelevant. It's like, what is going to make you feel good? What is going to make you feel safe? These are the questions that we should be asking ourselves. Am I going to be able to tell people that I had a free birth? Although I can
Yeah.
understand, that, like, where that comes from, of course. I just think that, with everything that has come to surface in the free birth community as of recently, I think that this is a really good time to, like, address those things. Like, okay, let's get rid of all of the dogmatic, thinking around these topics like birth, where there's just so much nuance, and it's dangerous to think so extreme.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
So anyways, so how are things when you got home?
So my postpartum I feel like emotionally it was a lot better than my first. I wouldn't say a lot better, but like in the sense of like I wasn't as roller coastery, like I was a little more okay. I think when you have your first baby, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but with me having my first, it was just like, whoa, like throws you out, like I've never been through something like that. But this time I felt good, like I was in a good headspace, like physically, like I healed like very quickly, and now I'm 6 months postpartum, and what I mainly wanted to talk about was prior to having babies, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis 8 years ago. It I won't get into like the super past of it, but just as a snippet, it rocks your world. Like I went from being super active, working out, sometimes several times a day, riding my bike 8 miles to work, like just a very active, healthy person, to literally I could not even button my jeans because my fingers were so swollen. I couldn't sit on the toilet because my knees were so swollen. I needed help getting up. Like it was crazy. And I was only 20 at the time. So it definitely threw me out. It threw me on my ass. It was crazy. So obviously I've never been one to heavily want to rely on the pharmaceutical industry or doctors. So I went to the specialist initially, and that's what they told me I had was that. And he was like, I still remember, he was like, you're never going to get rid of this. So here's the methotrexate, and this is the start of your journey now. Basically, here's your pills, and see you. in the or whatever. And so I was just like, this cannot happen, you know. And I saw my mom grow up. Like growing up, my mom struggled a lot with. She had fibromyalgia, and she took tons of like pharmaceuticals, and I saw what it does to people, and I'm like, I can't do that. So, anyways, I've been on a crazy journey with that, trying to heal naturally, trying everything from veganism to, you know, raw veganism to massage to sound therapy, every kind of natural, like, thing you could think of. You know, I've probably tried it or, you know, have looked into it. Uh, a lot of things do help. So over the years, but what truly helped me was that's what really made me turn my life around and to God. And I finally realized I'm like, I can't, like, I'm like nothing without God. Like I was in so much pain. I was like, I don't know who else to talk to at this point. And I was like, God, like, please, I know I haven't been the best person all the time, but I need you now. And that really turned my life around to him because I realized that, you know, and I always believed in God, but like this truly made me realize like how, you know, that whole relationship is like real, you know, it's not just like something you say. But anyway, so fast forward to pregnancies with my first, it's weird because the symptoms disappear. They like kind of go dormant when I'm pregnant. Like I don't have the joint or the flare up. And but with my first, I remember like 4 months, it was like 4 months postpartum. I was still not having RA symptoms, and then they started to come back. And I would remember I was just like bawling. I'm like, no, like, how am I going to pick up my baby? Like, cause sometimes you know, your elbows or your shoulders, like it changes what joints are swelling up, but it's hard to pick things up. You know, I'm like, how am I going to pick up my baby? Like, how am I going to like, and I got pretty, that was hard because I just didn't know that it was going to come back. You know, I didn't know, but
I
you
wonder
know,
if it's the
you move on.
relaxant. I'm sorry.
No,
I was
you're
just
good.
saying, I wonder if it's the hormone relaxin that makes those symptoms go dormant because it helps to relax the muscles. I don't know. I'm just like so curious about that piece. Like, why does it go away during pregnancy?
Yes, I think it's definitely, I thought that myself, that is the relaxant because I remember there was times postpartum, like, where my body could, like, I'd move in certain ways. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I do not want this relaxant to ever leave because I'm like, I can't do that normally, you know, like, and then some people, I got a massage from someone once and she said that the stem cells from the baby, like, are your symptoms because it wasn't as, like, strong as it was in past years. So I don't know. I don't know what the science behind it is, but
That's cool.
yeah. So I'm like, you know, I don't know. But, so that was, you know, I started to live with it again, but this, because maybe it's a mix of like just things that I'd done at that point. I still had pain and flare ups and stuff, but it's not as bad as like the first, I'd say like 3 years that killed me, like were so hard. Like the symptoms were getting a little better to manage. But so then I got pregnant again. And so obviously like the symptoms came back, or I mean, went away. And so now they just started coming back this past month. And I was prepared for it this time in the sense of like, at least I know what to, you know, that it's not just gone forever as much as I'd love it to. But I wanted to speak about it mainly just because if there, you know, like if there's any other moms that deal with this, like I know how hard it is. And people there's a lot of theories in the mainstream medicine world where they're like, it's an autoimmune disease, your body's attacking itself, and it's a chronic illness. You know, those are kind of words tossed around. I mean, medical people will laugh in my face, but I don't think my immune system attacks itself. I don't believe that that's what's happening. But anyway, and a lot of people call this invisible disease too, like stuff like rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, lupus, like things you can't see on people, but it's like insanely chronic pain that they're dealing with. So
Yeah.
you could look totally normal and, you know, you have no idea. But so now that I've had my baby, I am struggling in a sense like, you know, it's weird because for years I had a lot of wrist swelling and now it's moved down to like my shoulder joints. So like sometimes it's really hard at night to like like for some reason in the middle of the night too, I'll like get really swelled and it's hard to like pick up the baby and, stuff like that. So I rely on my husband a lot for those moments. I'm kind of like a hard ass. Like I try my best to like do it even if I'm in pain, but I'm like, just like I said earlier, I've learned to ask for help over the years because it's okay to ask for help when you need it. So now I'm just kind of like, because I was pregnant, recently in the past couple of years, I kind of went on like autopilot. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I'm not really like suffering like I was. I got used to it. But now I'm like, all right, like I got to get back in healing mode where I got to kick the thing in the butt. I'm just over it. I'm so over this. There's like some things I've looked into, but since I'm breastfeeding, I obviously don't want it to affect the baby, certain nerves and stuff. So that's where I'm at. But I think a lot of, this whole invisible illness thing that we have going on in the world, like, I don't know why they happen. I know that disease is caused by emotions, by things rooted in our past or generational traumas or things that happen to us, like accidents, like vaccine injuries or things like that. But I've been trying to get to the root of this and I'm still working on it, and just when you think you like uncovered one thing, it's like more stuff comes up. So, but that's kind of, aside from that, my postpartum's been really smooth. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm so grateful. Even on the really hard days where like you wake up like feeling like crap because of, when I wake up feeling like crap because of my joints, I'm just like seeing my boys, like be happy and thriving. It's like, it makes it so good. It's like, you just push through it, whatever you're going through, you just got to push through it because they need you.
Yeah, amen to that. That's so true. I'm curious to know because I don't know much about rheumatoid arthritis and I don't know anyone personally who has it. So for the listeners, if there's anyone who is maybe going through something similar, what are some things that have worked for you that you've seen like good results from? Because it does seem like over the years like you said, the pain isn't as bad as it was in those first few years. So I wonder if there's anything that you do, if it's on a daily basis or whatever, to help with the pain.
Yeah. Well, before I was married and had kids, I had a lot more money to play around with, like, because I was still working back then. So I would get massages all the time. Massages, like, always felt great and helped. And then diet was a huge thing. Like, I did go vegan for several years and I was really strict with it, and it worked really well for me for a while. Like, it would help reduce a lot of the pain. But then after about 5 years of being vegan, my body, like, I was craving meat, like hardcore. And so I started to eat meat again. And I feel like it worked well for me, but then it almost like kind of backfired because then other things I looked into, I was like, dude, like I need to eat meat. Like this is not good for me either. So it was like a weird double-edged sword of like, this is helping me, but then later it wasn't. Obviously not eating like junk, like processed food, fast foods, stuff like that, like isn't good for anybody, but especially if you have something like this, it's not. So now my whole theory is like, I eat clean, but I don't think having a treat's like the devil or anything. Like, you have to, like, it's very, like, you just, like, I just notice what happens after I eat something. And if it's, like, triggering, I'm like, all right, like, I gotta cut this. So now what I'm noticing is what I just decided, I'm like, I'm gonna cut out gluten again, cut out wheat, just because since I had the babies, like, I went back to wheat and I was fine, but now I've noticed it kind of makes me flary. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna stop eating wheat now, So diets, like, I don't think it's, even if you look online about RA, it's like some people are like plant-based diet all the way. Some people are like, all I eat is steak all for the past 10 years. So there's like literally no one size fits all. And for me, it's been like, it changes over the years. So, but diet is huge. I think the main thing to take away with that is like staying away from junk and chemicals, you know?
Yeah.
So diet, massage, and then, man, we've been living in this house, like, we don't have a bathtub, but man, I loved hot baths. Like, that was just like, I really miss that. It's such a luxury to have a bathtub if you have one. So, um, but,
Right.
so that, I like heat. Like, a lot of people with RA are like, they use ice, but I'm like, I'm heat all the way. I don't care what anyone says. It just feels so much better for me.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear that there's like so many different perspectives on what's helpful depending on the person. It really just goes to show how multi-layered the whole thing is too, like how ice could be helpful for one and then you're like, oh no, complete opposite. Like the heat does it for me. It's a very interesting thing. Healing is just I'm so fascinated by just how we heal, like on a physical level, because I do think, like you had mentioned before, our emotions are so tied into it, and our emotions get stored in our bodies, and our bodies respond. And there's just, like you said, not a one size fits all. I don't know why I feel called to bring this up, so I'm just gonna say it. Have you ever explored, like, because I know you had said something about going gluten free. Have you ever explored like free milled flour, like freshly milled grain for flour?
I have seen lots of videos on that, especially nowadays, but I haven't personally tried that myself.
It's fascinating. So when I like learned, and there's a podcast episode that I will actually link in the show notes and I'll send it to you as well. Her name is Sue Baker, I believe. I hope I didn't mess her name up, but her whole podcast, literally, there's an entire podcast dedicated to bread. She's also Christian, and so she talks a lot about how bread is life, how bread has been demonized because of what they've done to the bread, like, in our country, and how they've like stripped it of its nutrients, and then they've like fortified it with like all of these artificial vitamins and minerals. It's not in its most like readily available form. And like, when things are fortified, I just know like, okay, that's not going to be good for me. And like the folic acid and all of that stuff that's like in all of the flour because of the wheat germ, like they strip the flour of wheat germ, which is actually like where all of like the nutrients, well, a lot of the nutrients are. So when you have bread that's made with the grain in its whole form, that grain is milled into flour, and you're getting like the wheat germ and all of the, like, literally everything that is in the grain, which is how God designed it. It's just so fascinating. And I'm going to put that podcast episode in the show notes, by the way, for anyone who's like curious about it. The reason she has an entire podcast dedicated to this is because she brings people onto her podcast to share their stories of how eating bread made in the way that God designed it healed them from chronic illness. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that's because I love to bake, and I always buy like organic flour, but I know it's been so tampered with at this point, but yeah, I would love to check that out.
Yeah, it's one of the many, many, many things that are on my list of like things I want to do to improve my health. But
Yeah,
that one is high up on the list.
yeah. But I will say too, I mean, I talked more about like physical things, but I will say whether you have an illness or not, but especially, I mean, at least in my experience with this, your mental state and my nervous system, like keeping that in check is crucial, because if I'm stressed or if I am angry, or, with postpartum, sometimes you can be like, I get ragey sometimes postpartum, and for no reason, it's just hormones or whatever, but keeping that kind of stuff in check and just having a clear mind is like essential to like feel good, And so, yeah, that's another main thing I wanted to point out.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's so key. And having to, gosh, I feel like that's been my biggest challenge is like regulating my nervous system postpartum this time around, like not getting ragey and not like giving into like the first feeling that comes up for me, especially, with little ones. But yeah, I think we can all benefit from that. But I'm so happy that you were able to come on the podcast and share your story. And I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to share your birth story and your postpartum experience. Yeah, I just want to know, is there anything else that you feel called to share about?
No, I mean, like I said, this is so out of what I normally do, and I'm like, I just thank you for chatting with me. I think I'm always the listener most of the time, so I feel like Yeah, I appreciate you. And I just, yeah, thank you for having me on here.
Of course, thank you for being on. And I'm so excited for you to have come on the podcast to share your story. I feel like God, gives us that nudge when he knows that our story can help someone else. And that's why this podcast exists. It's literally just to share women's stories because it's so healing, even just sharing our stories.